Carol, what does the end of summer and back to school mean to you?
Oh, it means that all those kids are back in school and so the restaurants aren't as crowded. And no, it means time to buy office supplies on sale, right?
Yeah, I'm just glad I don't have to do it anymore. I mean, stacks and stacks of paper towels and tissues and pens and crayons, et cetera, et cetera. But in celebration, I buy myself some new pens or pencils.
I do too. And you know what? When I went to school, we weren't required to bring paper towels and Kleenex tissues. We basically had to have paper and pencils, and of course, when we were younger, crayons, but there was not a big list.
I think it's because my kids were in Catholic schools. I think that was part of it. But
Well,
can you
now they're
imagine? Do they do it in public school now too?
Yeah, they do it in public schools. But here's the other
Oh,
thing. My sisters and I were laughing because we never remember having a backpack or even a bag to carry our books. We just carried the stack.
right.
Are we dumb or what?
I think they just didn't have them back then.
I guess not. Get this episode started.
Welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres way out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Carol. How does your garden grow?
So I am finding as I wander about the garden that August is kind of a month when the garden is more or less taking care of itself without too much extra work for me. I picked vegetables, mostly tomatoes and peppers at this point, did a little
Yep.
weeding, did a little deadheading. I took myself to Half Price Books one day and I ended up with the nature notes of an Edwardian lady. You remember the country garden
Country
of an,
Dryer, the Country
yeah,
Diary of an Edwardian Lady. We all read that, right? So now
yeah.
they have the Nature Notes of her by Edith Holden.
They're in 1905 and the country diary is 1906. And the one I have came out in 94, but they had published it in
Uh-huh.
89. And so I'm like, I bought it because, country diary of an Edwardian lady, blah, blah, blah. But mine has a different cover. I went to look it up online and it's like, well, I got a pretty good deal because they're quite pricey on the internet.
Interesting. So also you said that you finished a puzzle and it's a puzzle of state flowers.
I did finish a puzzle of state flowers in there, and I'm deciding whether I should rip it up and put it in the back in the box or if I should, put the stuff on
Frame
it
it.
and frame it. I don't know. I
Yeah.
haven't decided on that one.
So what was Oklahoma's state flower on it? Do you remember?
You know what? It's not really flower by flower. It's really like a map of the United States overlaid with the kinds of flowers that would be indigenous in those types, not indigenous, but state flowers. So it's really hard to tell state by state.
Gotcha. So, and then you also bought another book. You've
Well,
been busy.
I have been, but before that field trip, I went over to the greenhouse to take back some
Oh,
flats and pots that were in the
yeah.
garage. And I was just going to chit chat, make sure they knew I wanted fall pansies and violas, which is a joke. Of course, they knew I wanted them. But anyway, she had some houseplants there. She said they just didn't sell and they had got them already in these clay pots. So she ended up giving me a creeping fig that's
Yep.
variegated and one that's green. So that was a nice surprise to come home with two plants because I really just was going to go down there and chit chat. And of course, if they had something I really wanted, I was going to buy it.
It's just not
Then,
really the time to buy stuff. So,
no,
yeah.
it's not. It's not. And I was the only customer there, except a lady and her two daughters showed up because they had rescued a cat, Mittens, and they came to reclaim Mittens. Mittens had gotten two baby brother kitties, didn't like them, and had run off. So they were happy to get Mittens back. But anyway, I went to Wild Keys Bookshop down in Franklin, and my joke about back to school and there's nobody around and all that.
Yeah.
Well, it was hard to find a parking spot down there because, you have to park on the street or there's a public parking lot. It was full and I found a parking spot. And I just went into the browse. I found the cutest little children's book, Dee. Millie Fleur's Poison Garden by Christy Madden. It is so cute. I think I sent you a picture of it.
You did. You sent me a picture of the cover. But Mille Fleur, which means a lot of flowers.
Yes.
That's cute. Very cute.
That is cute. And I will give it to one of my great nieces, but it is really cute. It's a cute story about being quote unquote your own weird self.
Well, there you go.
That sums up my week, Dee. I would like to hear about your week, and I don't want to hear about this rain nonsense. We didn't get rain. It's dry.
So we got 3.5 inches of rain here, very fast. So fast that most of it didn't soak in because I was digging stuff yesterday and it was dry as a bone. So, but I worked out in the garden yesterday until I could no longer because every time I'd stay bent over and then stand up, I'd be like, whoo, lightheaded. So I got to go in. But I wanted to give people a tip. It was really too hot to be out there. But they pronounce it Element. It's an electrolyte water that you mix with your water. It's salt and potassium and magnesium. And I sat under the fan to feel better. And so it's spelled Lent, but they pronounce it Element. Doesn't have any added sugar. It's just natural essences with the potassium and the magnesium. And then I later took a bath instead of a shower and I soaked in Epsom salts because that's magnesium and it helps with muscle soreness.
Yes.
And I recovered very nicely and both of those helped, except my left knee, which is always fussy. And then the reason for all this is yesterday I dug out 3 rose bushes. Now, before you think, oh, good Lord, Dee, what are you doing in August? These were not that well rooted, even after being in there for years. And they were from trial plants from Proven Winners that Proven Winners doesn't even have those anymore. And I thought, I don't want these rose bushes. So I just started digging them out. And I'm going to put Indigo Spires Blue Salvia or Mystic Spires in that space because these were short rose bushes. And it's great for pollinators. It's not prickly. I already have 4 rose bushes in that bed. I don't need any more. And so that takes me to, I'm revising the garden in August and September because it's a good time to revise it. It's a good time to look around and see where stuff is growing out of bounds, where stuff is doing well, what things you might want to repeat.
Right.
And then I take notes on my phone. So I harvested some more green beans, which are about done. And I harvested a bunch of peppers and 2 eggplants and one of my Armenian cucumbers and a few cherry tomatoes. And so it's time to pull out those tomatoes. They are way past time. And then I deadheaded the roses one last time. So in all the literature you see online and in magazines and books that are all written about places that are east and west of me or north, people stop that in July. I stop in August because I've got another whole month of bloom.
Sure.
And I usually don't get my first freeze until late October, if then. So I deadhead them one last time and I'll feed them this week. So that's it. I've been busy.
You have been busy. And I will say that you talk about things kind of getting out of bounds and everything. I have the autumn bride heucheras growing next to the front walkway up to the front door. And those blooms were like over the sidewalk. And then some had self-seeded on the other side. So I have them kind of come in on both sides. I don't mind walking through and brushing against those, but there's often bees on them. And I thought, the delivery guys and anybody coming up to my door might not appreciate that. So I did cut those back so there's a clear path up to the house.
I've never heard of autumn bride coral bells, and I'm looking at them right now, and I'm like, dang, they do have big flowers. And
I don't know why you haven't heard of these.
They don't sell them here, and I guess I never ordered them. And they're a Velosa type, so they would handle our hot weather, supposedly.
Yeah, they do great. They do
They're beautiful.
Self-sow. In fact, I have one growing in a little crack by the front step. I mean, it's a little tiny thing. And I leave it because I'm like, look at you trying to grow in a crack in the cement. You're so
You know
cute.
why I think they don't? Yeah. You know why I think they don't sell them here? Because they're green. And so they tend to sell, the ones with the colored leaves. And the only one that's good of that is Southern Comfort here. All the
Well,
others get too hot and die.
it's kind of I have it in several places because like I said, it's just come up in several places. I like it.
I have a question about it. So I bet you don't get deer. I bet you don't get rabbits on it because you don't really get a lot of deer. But I bet rabbits don't eat it either because it probably has fuzzy leaves, right?
Yeah, the leaves are a little bit rough, so it's not going to get eaten by rabbits. I don't know about deer, but
See what a
anyway,
good help you are to me? You're such a good help to me. You know why?
why?
My hostas are being devoured because I don't have a dog anymore. So I'm going to try these and replace a couple of my hostas.
You might find them very
Yeah,
good.
thank you for that. I appreciate it.
So that should be my favorite this week, but it's not.
Okay, what is your favorite?
My favorite this week is Hydrangea paniculata limelight. That
Great
thing,
plant.
great plant. It is not native. It is sterile flowers, so there's no bees and I don't see bees and butterflies all over it, which is kind of sad. But I have it growing by the one gate to the backyard in the backyard, and it grows at least 2 feet above the fence, which is a 6 foot fence. So you can see the
Right.
blooms from the street. And I think it just kind of looks cool. And it's in its full glory right now. And
Uh-huh.
anyway, that's it. And you can cut that thing back. I could cut that back to a foot from the ground and it would still be 6, 8 feet tall by the end of the summer next year.
And still bloom,
Yes.
which is why everybody grows it. I mean, hydrangea paniculata limelight is one of the stars of the garden. It just is. It's just that it's sterile.
Yeah.
And so nothing, drinks, nothing is able to work with it. But that's part of the reason the blooms last so long too.
Right.
So,
How
you
about
just have to decide.
how about your favorite?
My favorite is I'll have to give my crepe myrtles a shout out. They are all just glorious right now. They've been glorious for almost a month and they're blooming like crazy. And what else do I want to say? I don't have crepe myrtle scale. So I'm not like, everybody in town has crepe myrtle scale.
Well, and I do like to see those crepe myrtles in bloom. They're pretty nice. But here you'll never get a crepe myrtle to be a tree. We have them as shrubs that are root hardy. And so I did plant one with reddish leaves.
Yeah.
I
Well, they
plant
grow as trees here or as shrubs, either one.
so I
So
think my neighbor around the way, she had something blooming and I just like driving by fast over and over, not fast. I think she's got a crepe myrtle over there because it looked exactly it was blooming at the right time, pretty pink flowers. So
I have red ones, pink ones, purple ones, lilac ones. I have several kinds. And the thing is, if I ever get crepe myrtle scale, I'll have to rethink them because I'm not willing to do what you have to do to take care of it. And it's a
yeah,
real problem in Oklahoma City and now it's in Edmond. So in my opinion, it's only a matter of time before I get
right,
it, but
right.
that's okay.
So the tip here for people is if you're going to plant crepe myrtle, plant it in the spring, give it a chance to get really root established because the top's probably if we have a bad winter, it's going to die back. Anyway,
The
question of
truth
the
is,
week.
if no, and truth is here, if we have a really bad winter, they die all the way to the ground here too. So people need to know that. It
Yeah,
just is what it is.
it is.
Okay. Question of the week.
My sister sent me this, and the exact question was she wants to know what color the peppers are supposed to be that you gave her, red or green. And this was, she was referring to her daughter, my niece. And I thought, I gave her a pepper plant. And then I
Did you?
remember I did. I grew that red impact from seed that All America Selection sent us. And those are supposed to be
Yes.
huge, big peppers. Anyway, they will turn red when fully ripe. But the
Right.
problem is, as people have long determined, many sweet peppers, because they're in the same family as tomatoes, there's so many different blots and rots and things like that. Blots? No, blights. Blights,
I knew what you meant.
rots, things like that. So sometimes they'll rot before they actually turn the color. But if you can get it to stay and turn color, which later in the season, those are the peppers that are going to turn. you'll find it's much, much sweeter, but you could still eat them green.
You can. And in fact, if you want your pepper plant to keep producing, you need to eat some of them green
Exactly.
because once it goes to full fruition, then that's going to be the end of that. And there are some varieties of bell peppers that turn orange, some that turn red. There's some new bell peppers. I grew one this year that has purple when it's green,
Right?
and it turns to a yellow. So I think this is a good question. I tend to grow more chili peppers than I
Uh-huh.
do bell peppers. They just do better here, and I just like them better. So I think I only have one bell pepper, and it's done really well, but they're very small, small bell peppers.
I have several
But they've
different
done,
kinds of bell peppers. I have Big Bertha, California Wonder, Ruby Giant, Red Impact.
yeah, you've got a bunch.
Yes.
I tend to have things like Big Jim, Anaheim,
I have
stuff like that.
I have a Big Jim and I have an Anaheim, I
Did you
think.
grow a Mad Hatter this year?
No.
I did. I grew a Mad Hatter. So, I like peppers. I eat them a lot. So there you go. But not real, real hot ones. I like ones that are not too hot. So green means green or purple, means that they're not ripe yet. And red or yellow or whatever color means that they're ripe.
All right, I'm going to do the quote, take us into our flower topic. You gave me quite the long quote.
Sorry.
That's okay. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing, and I gave it up and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang. And that is Mary Oliver poem called I Worried.
I love that poem. It's a
And
good
I'm
one.
I'm sure halfway through people thought, "Oh, this is Mary Oliver."
Yeah, it sounds just like her, doesn't it? So our flower this week, we thought it'd be fun to do drama queens in the garden. And
Yes,
then
you
you
came
wrote,
up with this topic.
we like big flowers, so we cannot lie.
And
And
my
your favorite,
favorite is the
yeah,
limelight is a big flower. We
is a
cannot
big
lie.
flower, big flower. And then other big flowers are like perennial hibiscus. And I grow several of those, including one called Muy Grande, which means big. And it is big. It's big and it's pink, and bumblebees love it. And it blooms one flower a day, and then that flower's gone. And then it blooms the next day with another flower, and it blooms for a good, I'd say, a month. And then I have a really pretty purpley blue one that I'll have to look up the name down in my lower garden. What else do I have? Oh, I have those ones that are the Summerific series that are just gorgeous things, but they're short. So Muy Grande is a good 6 feet tall, 5 feet wide in the garden. I mean, the plant's big, the flowers are big, etc. Right? These
Yes.
Summerifics, they have dark foliage instead of green, and they are short. They only get, I'd say, 3.5 feet by 3.5 feet. And then they like full sun, big dramatic flowers, great pollinator plants. I like perennial hibiscus.
And I currently have no perennial hibiscus. And every year about this time, I think, wonder why
Why
I
don't
don't
I
have.
have one?
Anyway, our next big flower is sunflowers. And the gray mammoth
Yes.
is the king of all. It's will grow, I don't know, 10 to 12 feet tall and have that great big sunflower. You start it from seed in the spring in the ground with little kids. And,
Yeah.
if you can keep them like, that's the seed you planted, keep them interested, they'll soon see a very large plant that will tower over them. So
Yes,
sunflowers can be quite dramatic in the garden.
they can. And one of my favorites is, what is the name of that one? It's a blonde. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. It's the one that they call blonde something, and it is a beautiful one. It's a red-headed one, so it's got red on the outside and yellow in the middle. It gets big and tall too. Very, very popular, and you can buy the seed from Burpee. And then another, I like all those ones, the Autumn Beauty series. They're all
Yes.
great.
And then I have Concert Bell, All America
Great
Selection
plant.
Center, and it's in full bloom out there. And again, the one problem is because of the privacy fence, when it's in full bloom, they're all facing the fence. And I'm like, turn around and look at me. But they're beautiful and you know, they're beautiful.
They are beautiful. So the next one you listed was dinner plate dahlias. And dahlias have a hard time in Oklahoma, as every flower farmer who tries knows, and every new garden client I get knows. They'd have a rough time. Sometimes you can get them going really good, and the dinner plate ones do have to be staked because they have great big flowers on them. Not the size of a dinner plate, but maybe a salad plate.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful. One of the problems we have with them here is grasshoppers.
Well, here I don't grow dahlias for the simple reason that the dahlia tuber is not hardy in the ground here. And so come fall, you got to dig all those things up. And so I'm not become addicted. I know that there are people that, they're buying and selling and trading those roots all over the place. I did read one tip that I will pass along from a non-dahlia grower, and that is when you pull up that tuber and it's got that little stem, if you will store it initially, put it with that stem down, and that'll allow any of the water that's gotten into the stem to drain
To
out.
the stem.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that'll
that's good.
cause less rot when you do actually store those because you have to store them, in a cool place through the winter, blah, blah, blah.
I've done all that. I've stored them dry, and I've also stored them in pots down on the floor of my greenhouse. And they did fine here as long as the grasshoppers didn't get them. And I'm also going to say that grasshoppers also attack perennial hibiscus.
Well, I'm gonna say something blasphemous to your dahlia lovers.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you just grow a good zinnia? And there's dahlia flowered zinnias that you can grow. Just grow some of those from seed. Let's move on to the next group.
So you said any flower on a big stalk, and that would be like foxgloves, digitalis, hollyhocks, delphiniums, gladiolas, and Orion pet lilies. I grow one Orion pet lily right now. I've grown others in the past, but eventually they've died out on me. The one I grow is Scheherazade. It does really well. It loves the east side of the house, the northeast side. I grow foxglove. You have to start them. They're biennial. So you have to start them as seeds, let them
Yep.
grow up, and then let them flower. Or you can just buy them in the big box store when they're coming into flower because they've done the hard part for you. They have to be grown in partial shade here. I bet you can grow them in the sun, right?
I would hope so.
Yeah. So hollyhocks, we both love them. Mine are now perennialized because although they're kind of a biennial too, mostly they now there's so many of them in different stages that they just do what they want. However, deer eat them, so I don't know what will happen there. Glads, easy to grow. Once you grow them, you'll never be rid of them,
So
whether you want to
here,
be or not.
glads can overwinter in the soil here, and that used to not be the
Here
case, but I
too.
have several that just kind of come up in different places where I planted them and never thought to go dig them back out. And
Right.
so they've become like perennials. And I don't think about them, and then this big stalk will show up. I also
Yeah.
and did you skip delphiniums because you don't grow those?
Oh, I don't grow those. I can't grow them. The closest thing I can grow to them is larkspur, and it's not the same.
No,
Trust
it's
me.
not. But I do have those seedlings of delphinium, hollyhock, and foxglove out there. They're still growing. They're kind of small, but I hopefully will have some to plant out this spring or this fall, I mean, and see how they do. I think growing delphiniums is a lifelong project.
We'll see.
But on these big flowers, the thing about these big flowers is you should use them as accents. They're very dramatic when they stand alone at bloom time and, everything else may be quiet. And then here's this big, loud flower.
Hmm.
If you put them all together in a garden, what do you have, Dee?
It wouldn't be very pretty. It'd be kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it would be if you had too many. Now, the dahlia people, they'll have a whole bed of these things because they're really growing them to get
Cut.
that flower. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I assume they're cutting the flower or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
and they're so specialized in how they're treated and everything. You can't just take your dahlias, and just plunk them down here, there, and everywhere because they need staked and they're kind of a mess.
I mean, I've done them where I just plunk them down, but they just don't make it. I mean, they might be good for 1 year, but I hear up in Tulsa, which is the northeastern part of my state, that they do a lot better. But you do have to stake them. There's a whole list of things you have to stake. Larkspur, the big larkspur that, some of it needs to be staked or it leans into other things.
And sometimes, believe it or not, hollyhocks, delphiniums, they need to be staked. I would never stake a foxglove.
Nah, they don't need to be staked. At least not in my garden so far.
And sunflowers usually don't need to be staked, though. I'll tell you what, Dee, for the first time ever, I had all those sunflowers just come up on their own and they bloomed earlier. And I go out there in the garden and I can tell that like animals have tried to climb up and they broke the stem off, getting to the seed head. And then I cleaned it up and put it away. And those sunflowers have all bloomed. I'm going to clear them all out. But anyway. So a garden without some of these accent flowers, what is that, Dee? This is a quiz.
Boring. Very boring.
That's right. A big yawn.
Big exclamation points in the garden. That's what they are.
Yes. That's a good way to put it, Dee. Punctuation in the garden. I'm writing a whole blog post about that, Dee. You gave me a big idea. Punctuation in the garden.
Good deal. So are we finished talking about big flowers?
Wait, I'm making a note. Punctuation in the garden. I'm totally right now.
Well, while you write that note, I'm going to do the next quote. When from our better selves we have too long been parted by the hurrying world and droop, sick of its business, of its pleasures tired, how gracious, how benign is solitude. And that was William Wordsworth. And when I read that to think about putting it for this week, I thought to myself, and he didn't even have to deal with social media.
Exactly what I was thinking. This quote is timely. That's all I'm going to say about that. It is
timely. So, vegetables. So, we thought we would talk this week. We talked last week about nitrogen. And this week we thought we would talk about the elements other than nitrogen. And that's like potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, etc. And then there are minor elements too. And so this is again from that Kitchen Gardener, June, July of 1999. And I wrote down, remember when green sand was a thing? I remember that. Everybody wanted green sand.
I never remember people wanting green sand, but I have read about it in the old books. And so I thought, I wonder what it exactly is. I looked at it and the short answer is prehistoric deposits of sand in the ocean.
Yeah, so it's like this weird thing that you would have to get and put into your ground. And according to Rutgers Cooperative Extension, it should really be considered more valuable as a soil conditioner than a fertilizer. But it was kind of a thing in the late 80s. That's what I remember about it.
Yeah, I don't. And the actual name is glauconite. And what they said about green sand is people thought that they were adding nutrients to the soil with it, but actually they were changing the soil property so that it would hold more nutrients for the plants. And so it's a type of sand, basically.
But it's very expensive, so I wouldn't invest in it at this point. But you do need phosphorus, potassium, and minor elements in your garden, along with mycorrhizae. You need all of these things to work together. And one of the things that my clients are most surprised by is mycorrhizae and what it looks like. And they think sometimes that they have mold growing, say, under their mulch. And I'm like, no, that's just where your mulch is starting to decay into your soil, and it's the mycorrhizae breaking it down. So that's an important thing too. But phosphorus and potassium are the other two. They're the P and the K, NPK.
Well, and like phosphorus, which is the P part.
Yep.
According to the article, it says, when phosphorus levels are low, plants grow slowly and may have poor fruit or seed development. Phosphorus is especially important in cool weather. That's why most starter fertilizer contains high amounts of it.
Right.
The other thing that he said was superphosphate, which we've all seen superphosphate for sale.
Yep.
That's when they take phosphate rock and combine it with sulfuric acid, and that makes the phosphorus more readily available to the plant, which is why they call it superphosphate.
Right. And it also didn't it used to be in all the super bloom kind of stuff? Wasn't that superphosphate to get really big blooms and stuff? And now, I mean, do you need superphosphate? You don't really need it. So,
No, and actually a lot of phosphates will run off and end up in the water supply, and it kind of screws things up. And so I think there's a little bit of a discouragement to use too much of a high phosphorus fertilizer, if you could even find it. And then potassium encourages root growth and helps plants resist disease and can increase the size of vegetables and improves cold hardiness. And if you have a potassium deficiency, you often have weak plants, slow growth, small or shriveled fruit, and leaf burning at the tips and margins.
Yep. So you should get a soil test, which
yes,
people never want to do. But like right now, I think I need a soil test in my cut flower beds because this year I don't think things grew as well as they normally do. So I'm actually thinking about doing that because I think I'm low. I really think I'm low in potassium. And I think I'm going to have to work a little bit to get it back. But I sent some pictures to you yesterday because I found some fertilizers through, who was that through, Carol? Was it through Pine Tree Garden Seeds? It might have been. It was through one
I
of the.
think you just sent me the picture. I don't think you told me where you got it.
Yeah, I don't think I did. So I was looking at some seeds or some garlic or something, and I think it was on Pine Tree. And they had several natural fertilizers that were all made from fish. So fish bone instead of, cow bones, things like that.
Yeah,
So,
the fertilizer is from Down to Earth, is the
yes,
name of the company. And this is a point where we should talk about the OMRI
Omri.
label,
Yeah,
which that certifies that it really is organic. I
right.
forget what OMR, organic
I can look it up for you.
something.
But the Omri label is like they have to work really hard. It's Organic Materials Review Institute. And I think it costs
Yes.
money to get that label the same way it costs money to get certified organic label. You have to pay to have your stuff tested. And so, if it's Omri listed, then it's for sure organic. And I don't want to use inorganic fertilizers all the time. So,
No. And I was reading this. This is interesting. I'll tell you what I was reading here in a minute. But the link you sent me was to an Amazon store site for Down to Earth.
mm-hmm.
And they even have compost this box. So they've tried to make this thing as environmentally friendly as possible.
Right, which would be great. And they had a three package deal. So it looks really good. And if I added that to, say, Back to Nature, which is composted cottonseed hulls and some other things, I could probably get it back. But in the meantime, I'm really thinking about doing a soil test.
I think a soil test is a good idea. Maybe I'll soil test my vegetable garden raised bed this winter, and you do yours, and we'll compare notes.
That'd be interesting.
So then the thing that I read, by the way, our friend C.L. Finari in her newsletter, she talked about the reason that you use synthetic fertilizers, and we kept calling them chemical fertilizers last week. They're all
Which isn't
chemicals.
fair because they are, we should explain that really quickly. All fertilizers are chemicals. It's just some are synthetic and some are from the nature.
So the reason you would use synthetics in containers is because it makes the nutrients are available much faster, and you're growing that thing in a very short amount of time. And you want the nutrients. You don't have all summer to wait for those nutrients to break down like you would with a tree or perennials.
Right.
And so that's a reason to use a synthetic fertilizer on those containers. It breaks down really fast.
Right.
And it's readily available.
But synthetic fertilizers can burn. So you need to be careful about how you use them versus stuff that's organic usually does not burn. So there you go. All righty. Anything else we want to say about this?
No, except we've challenged ourselves now with the soil test. So I'll have to figure out where to send soil samples here.
I'll have to send mine to Logan County or Oklahoma County, one of the two. And here you do it through your cooperative extension. I don't know where you do it in Indiana.
I think the cooperative extension has somebody that they recommend you send it to. I shall find out.
We will find out. And in fact, that might be our veggie topic next week. Where do you get your soil test and how to do it?
And how to do it.
That's a good one.
At some point. Maybe we should wait until we actually have our soil results back.
Yeah, maybe. All right, do the next quote.
When I look back, I am so impressed again with the life-giving power of literature. If I were a young person today trying to gain a sense of myself in the world, I would do that again by reading, just as I did when I was young. Maya Angelou.
So I want to say one thing about that quote. There was a short that came up on something, a short video. And I guess Maya Angelou was at some talk show. I don't know if it was Oprah. I don't know who it was. But a young person was asking a question. It was a young woman, very young. And she said, Maya, I want to know how you do XYZ. And Ms. Angelou said, well, first of all, to answer your question, I am not Maya to you. To you, I am Ms. or Miss Angelou because I am your elder, which means I've lived life longer than you have. And therefore, you need to show me respect. And I was like, woo, go get her, Maya Angelou, Miss Angelou, because she was older than me too. But she explained it really well. She wasn't mean about it. She just said, I have achieved a certain level of respect because I have lived life longer than you have. And do you understand that? And the little girl was like, you could tell she was like, whoops. But I just thought that was interesting.
It is.
On the bookshelf.
Yes. Sundial of the Seasons by Hal Borland.
Yeah, it's great.
And so remember, I was researching a lost lady of garden writing, Anne Ophelia Dowden, who was an illustrator author.
Right.
And then I found out she illustrated 2 books by Hal Borland, Plants of Christmas and The Golden Circle, A Book of Months. So I went to find those.
Did you find those?
And along the way.
Did you find those?
I found them and bought them, yes.
Oh, I want them. Okay, because I want the pictures. And also I love the idea of the sundial of the seasons, then the golden circle, because I think they'll go together.
So then along the way, I like trip over this one and I'm like, oh, I'm holding it up. I have to have Sundial of the Seasons. And the subtitle is A Selection of Outdoor Editorials from the New York Times, originally published in 1964. The columns were from 1943 to 1963. And this book is so good, Dee.
It is.
That it got republished in March of 2020, and new copies of that are still available. And probably because it came out in March 2020, that's why nobody's raving about it. Because I think every book that came out in that time period is like,
it just kind of went
lost.
Yeah, it got lost in the COVID ether, as it were. So, okay, so I bought it too because we both love Hal Borland. We use him for quotes quite often. He is a lyrical writer. He reminds me a little bit of Alan. Is it Alan Bush? Is that right? Am I getting the name right? The other guy who wrote for the New York Times. No, Alan Lacey, because his wife, Hella Lacey, is the name of my aster in my garden. Anyway, same type of writer. I started in August because I thought to myself, I want to read what he wrote about in August. And I'm trying to savor it. So I am halfway through August because we are recording this on the 15th, which is also Garden Bloggers Bloom Day, by the way. So I should get out there and take some photos. But I have found it to be lyrical. And even though he's not in my part of the country, a lot of the same things are happening in my August that are happening in his August.
Yes. And so like today he wrote about Queen Anne's lace blooming. And it's just just a page. And it's just like a nice little thing that he ends it up with saying, and we don't know which Queen Anne it's actually named for.
Because it could be named for could be named for any of them. So it is such a good book that I don't say this very often, but I would say rush out and buy that 2020 copy. If you buy it, the old one, you have to look for it various places. It's a little hard to find.
So here's what they wrote about the 2020 reprint. It says, living in a world circumscribed by up-to-the-minute news and electronic tools we barely master before they are out of date, we attempt to shield ourselves from environmental events which threaten to overturn our constructed reality. Naturally, in such fast-paced and topsy-turvy surroundings, we watch the sky and earth for signs of regularity, looking to the changing seasons for hope and rejuvenation, and seeking out the voices of those who spoke of constancy in the changes of the natural world. And then it goes on to say how Borland was such a voice. There are 365 essays in this book, one for every month of the year. And then it just talks about like some of his ruminations, page-long ruminations.
It also says, begin each day with the gentle wit and wisdom of the person who, for nearly 4 decades, wrote his outdoor editorials in an engaging and inimitable fashion, eagerly read by thousands. It's so funny that we picked this book, and then
it goes with our theme.
It goes with our theme. How does that happen? And then just a few days ago, this will be I'll talk about that on my rabbit hole, but it all comes together seamlessly.
So I now have 4 of his books, This Hill, This Valley, which is his memoir. I have the 2 that were illustrated by Anne Ophelia Dowden. Now I have Sundial of the Seasons. And I also read his memoir that's called The Dog Who Came to Stay, a memoir, also quite good. I got that one out of the library. But he was born in 1900, died in 1978. And 7 of his books are still on bookshop.org, which is a testament to how good his writing is, that they made good reprints. I'm not talking about those crappy ones that people slop together. These are good reprints by established publishers who say these books can sell. So that's Hal Borland.
So
Sundial of the Seasons.
Yeah, we love this book. And it's a great book to read before bed so that you sleep peacefully. It's a great book to read in the morning. So that's a good thing.
All right. Do that quote and let's talk about our dirt.
Sometimes the bad things that happen in our lives put us directly on the path to the best things that will ever happen to us. That's Paul Millsap.
Really? And that kind of fits into our dirt in a weird, twisted way. But I found this article through a colleague at GardenCom who put a link to it on a back channel place where we all talk. But he found there's a study that says trees don't like to breathe smoke.
Who does?
So interestingly enough, and we'll link to the article. So there were some scientists. What they were actually trying to study was how plants emit volatile organic compounds, i.e. the chemicals that make forests smell like a forest, and how they can impact air quality and even change clouds. So when they went out to do the research, there was heavy smoke from wildfires in Colorado, and they discovered that the plants were not emitting these volatile compounds. They weren't breathing. And so they discovered that they close up their stomata, the little openings in the leaves that allow them to take in air. They had a means to shut those down because of the heavy smoke. And so then the article goes on to describe what they think was happening. So anyway, it's like you go looking for one thing and you find something else.
You do.
And it's quite interesting.
You do. And also, speaking about wildfires, a lot of allergists, because I follow a lot of allergists now, a lot of allergists suggest that you wear a good mask when the air quality is that bad or when it's a high pollen time of the year, because of the lengthening. There's several things going on. Because of the lengthening of the seasons, we have higher pollen count than we used to have. They've done some studies on it. And we also had wildfires. So right about the time that our favorite plant, our non-favorite native plant, ragweed, was starting to send out all of its pollen, we also were getting smoke in your state and mine from the wildfires. And so a bunch of the allergists were like, get yourself a good quality mask if you're going to work outside, because it's just really hard on your lungs. And that's what the trees understand. is that it has little particulates in it.
Yes.
And the particulates
Yes.
are bad for your lungs, and they're bad for the tree's lungs too.
So it's very interesting I guess how God designed trees so that if there was a wildfire in the area, they wouldn't all succumb to smoke inhalation, so to speak.
Exactly. It's just fascinating.
It is fascinating stuff. Anyway, that was our dirt. I'll do a quote now to take us to rabbit holes. Speak words that rebuild the torn down places in others. And it is attributed to somebody named Mike Foster. And that is all I know.
That's all I know too. I thought it was a great one though. It's true. That's what we need to do for each other. So I'll go rabbit hole first. How about that?
You do that.
So I read the book Unexpected: Finding Resilience Through Functional Medicine, Science, and Faith by Jill Carnahan. And we'll link to the book. And it's about dealing with an unexpected illness. And I saw an interview with her. One of my favorite doctors who deals with mast cell activation syndrome is a lady named Tina Dempsey. Okay. And Tina Dempsey was interviewing Jill Carnahan about her new book. And this book came out in 2023. And that was quite the rabbit hole. And it actually relates to gardening. And here's how. Jill Carnahan grew up on a farm in the 1960s, right about the time that we were right in the thick of just really doing industrial farming. Okay, Carol?
Yes.
And so what happened in the 1960s with industrial farming? What did they start doing a lot of?
Pesticides.
Spraying. Yeah, they sprayed a lot of pesticides, a lot of herbicides. They went to battle. And there were no, according to Jill, Dr. Jill, the EPA hadn't caught up yet. So there weren't even any restrictions. So she grew up on this farm and she always had trouble with lots of different things like eczema. So did I, by the way, breathing. So did I. And so she grew up and she decided to become a medical doctor. She went to medical school. And right in the middle of medical school, she got cancer. She got a very aggressive breast cancer when she was only 25 years old. And, it was devastating. I mean, the doctors didn't think she'd live, but she did. And then after she got through the very heavy duty chemo treatment, she got Crohn's disease, which isn't surprising because chemo destroys everything, not just, the things do anything any rapidly dividing cell. So she got Crohn's and she was able to heal herself from Crohn's disease. And so that made her more interested in functional and integrative medicine. So she now practices in Colorado. I thought this book was just great because it had really useful tips about all kinds of things. And her brother has now, two of her brothers have taken over their family farm, and her dad is still living too. And they turned it into a regenerative farm.
Cool.
Isn't that cool? So
that is cool.
It was just such a great book to read, very easy to read. I think I'm down to the last 10 pages. So, and I read it in a day and a half. It was that good and fast.
Cool. I might get that book and check that out. Because I was talking to you yesterday and it reminded me that I did get a book. It's called Good Energy, I think. And I don't have it in front of me, so I can't tell you the author.
I can.
We'll put a link to it.
It's Casey Means, and she's an MD too. I think I'm going to buy it.
So her story is that as a medical doctor, she was training in a specialty in ear, nose, and throat, and she's as a surgeon. And she says they get more and more specialized. And so she's helping people it's going to sound anyway. She's helping people remove symptoms of problems through surgery, but she's not getting into the root cause. And it bothers her so much that she actually quit the program. And now she's doing some sort of
integrative practice, right?
Yeah, something like that. I haven't gotten all the way through the book, but she talks about some of her own health issues and how, change of diet and exercise, she was able to clear up a lot of the problems that nobody could figure out. And it's like, well, here's the pill for it. So it's quite interesting. I've gotten through some of it, but there's so many books around here, Dee.
Oh, so many books at my house too. But this one really spoke to me. And I'll tell you the two things she says that'll help you more than anything and your doctor said the same thing, the one you were reading. You need to drink good, healthy water. And that should be
Yes.
mostly what you drink. And then the second one was you need to drink good, healthy food. I mean, eat good, healthy food. And if you will
Stay out of the center aisles.
don't eat prepackaged stuff as much as possible. And so those two things will help you more than anything.
That's true. And okay, now I'm going to back up a minute before I go into my rabbit hole. Speaking of prepackaged food, so I had garden club on Monday, went up to the north side, and they always have like snacks, like little cheeses and crackers and cookies. And so the woman who did the snack, she went to Trader Joe's. We don't have one on this side of town. And thank goodness, because
it's really
there were these little plum cookies that were so good. And then this other cookie, I can't describe it. I don't even know the name of it. And it's like, you are the devil herself bringing these cookies. I couldn't stop eating these one cookies. They were like chocolate with nuts. Oh my gosh. And anyway, and then she says, they're really good, slightly warmed up. And I'm like, stop. There's no Trader Joe's on my side of town, which has kept me from going and buying those cookies, which are, anyway.
The devil's spawn.
Something. The plum cookies. She had just come back from a trip to Japan. She studies Ikebana flower design. She studies it in Japan. It's a big deal. Because she used to live there for her husband's job. But anyway, she decided she had those plum cookies because it's like a Japanese cookie thing, and it was so good.
Yeah, because we should say about Trader Joe's, most of that stuff comes from Europe. That's why a lot of it is really good. But I digress. Tell me about your rabbit hole.
So my rabbit hole was Hal Borland. I went down and was looking at his bio and all this stuff. And so that's how I know when he was born and when he died. We'll talk more about him next week, probably. I did end up buying 2 books. I apologize to myself.
Moving on.
Dee, I want you to know the books were free.
What? Oh, I see. We're going to do more book math. Okay, go ahead.
Because I had some credit card points on a credit card that was on the Amazon, and I'm like, oh, if I use those points, these books are free. So I bought, what did I buy?
I don't know.
I just had something Homeland. I'll put a link next week. And then I bought a book he wrote about writing.
Oh, nice. Nice. Because he's a heck of a writer. Okay. So now we need to come up with seed spending, seed money, because our friend Teresa Byington, who does Roast Chat podcast, did you see the message she sent us yesterday?
Yes,
she's listening to old episodes because she got behind. I'm behind on Roast Chat too, by the way. She got behind because she went to England to see her grandchildren. I wish my grandchildren lived in England. I'm just saying I'd go visit too. But anyway, she got behind and she got on that Marigold episode and she goes, "You're killing me." She goes, "Where did you buy all your seeds?" And I was like, Eden Brothers. We bought a bunch of them on Eden Brothers. So we need to figure out a way to help her buy those seeds free.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. And then, well, that brings us to garden commissions and reminds me that between all this book buying and puzzle building and reading, I have yet to order my bulbs. So that is tops of the list. I got to order those bulbs. And other than that, I don't have any big plans in the garden. It's summertime. I'm going to weed, water. Maybe I won't have to mow this week because it's been dry. And then, the usual cut back, assess, plan, scheme, make list. We have some real chances for rain this weekend. I hope it comes, and that would not break my heart. How about your garden?
So have you ordered your garlic yet? Are you going to plant
I'm not going to plant garlic this year. No.
I have totally fallen in love with all these hardneck garlics. So I think I've already ordered some because John Sheepers reached out to me yesterday and said, "Hey, we can't run your credit card because we have the old number." And I said, "Oh, well, let me go get you the new number because, periodically it gets stolen, blah, blah, blah." So I gave him the new number, but I neglected to ask, what the heck did I buy from John Sheepers? They said, well, it's shipping on the way. So it has to be garlic because this is about when you need your garlic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
would be.
can't be my flower bulbs, which I've ordered
No.
several of. So what are we doing? Okay, I'm going to feed the roses one last time. and one of my clients reached out to me and she said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. I did exactly what you told me to do. I cut all my roses back by a third and I fed them with a good fertilizer." And she goes, "I've never seen roses like these this summer." And that made my heart happy. So I'm going to feed my roses one last time. I'm going to keep weeding and pulling out. I did pull out the 6-foot weed, Carol. By now,
good for you, Dee. It only took 2 weeks. That's like a record.
and it was an 8-foot weed by this time. It was impressive. I stood there and looked at that thing and I thought, wow, that's impressive. And I yanked it right out. Actually, I had to dig it with a shovel.
I was going to say, you didn't yank it, you dug it out.
I dug it, and it had a sister plant right next to it that was 5 feet tall. So I dug the two of them, and I'm looking out there, and it's going to be really pretty in that bed now because I cleaned it all up. So I'm trying to get the garden ready in case I decide to open it in September. I have 3 garden coaching clients, 2 next week, 1 the following week. So if you want garden coaching, call me. You can tell fallow's here because they've gotten through their summer and some things worked and some didn't. And that's when garden coaching revs up again. Bill and I decided to install drip irrigation on our new trees because it's just too much to keep up with it. And that was his decision. So we'll be doing that. What are your plans?
Well, I already told you my plans.
Pretty much just weed, mow,
yeah,
water.
Yeah. Yeah. You weren't paying attention.
I'm sorry. I think I was thinking about, I don't know. I think I was thinking about how Borland and how I want those 2 books that were illustrated by that Lost Lady of Garden Writing or Drawing.
Of course you do, Dee. I'm going to wrap this thing up so you can go look for books.
Well, you're going to help me.
Thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
But if you subscribe to our free newsletter on Substack, you'll get a link to listen to the podcast a day early. I need to point out to some of our listeners, the link is in the newsletter because one lady wrote in and said, "I tried to find it and I went to Apple Podcasts and it wasn't there." And I was like, that's because it's an early listen link.
That's right. If you want to help support us, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a donation through PayPal.
And thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.